this is a kind of a funny story. So a former coworker from Postal 8 was the assistant controller at Epic. And there was a job opening for a financial planning and analysis manager that I was grossly underqualified for, but I applied anyway. And so it came down to me and a lady who crushed me on experience, resume, all that. I mean, she had 20 years of experience at Community Coffee. So long story short, the CFO brings me in, says, "Hey, John, the lady who recruited you here, the assistant controller, she's not with us anymore. So how would you like to be the assistant controller?" And so just like any entrepreneur, I just said, sure.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. John Roberts. John, welcome to the podcast. You are the co-founder and owner of Attracct Accounting Advisors and co-owner of Roberts Brothers Investments, a real estate investment company. So I love the serial entrepreneur aspect of what you do. But I wanted to start, you reached out to me about 18 months ago. You sent me a message on LinkedIn, and you said, "Hey, Andrew, big fan of the podcast," which I'm like, okay, I like the way this is starting. You said you've watched every episode. I'm like, okay, this is just getting better, man. I like this. But you were just kind of thanking me for doing the job. But you made the point that it's really inspiring to learn from the entrepreneurs that we had on the show. And there was something about that message. You know, I guess I saw your profile picture there and good-looking guy, big smile, and reaching out to me. I'm like, okay, this guy's going somewhere. And I'm like, at that moment, I was like, one of these days he's going to be on the podcast. And here it is, 18 months later. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been quite the ride these last 18 months. Yeah. You know, I would say probably for the last year or so, I've probably done more, learned more than my entire 8-year career prior to that. So it's been great. I'm really excited to be on the show.
Well, I think one thing that I've watched you on social media for both of your enterprises, and like you're doing stuff, you're getting stuff done, you're making stuff happen, and that's what's exciting. So we have entrepreneurs of all, means and methods here, and some new and some old, some that exited, and you just got a lot of energy in your startup with 2 enterprises. So we're going to dig into that. So you are from the area?
Yeah, I grew up in Shenandoah.
Okay.
My folks and I moved up here in 94 or so for my mom's job, and originally from Metairie. And my dad still owns a business there. So for the last 20 years, he's been driving back and forth to Metairie.
Yeah.
And so grew up in Shenandoah, went to St. Jean Vianney parochial school, St. Michael for high school, and walked on to the football team at Southeastern, and was there for 5 years, and saw the ups and downs. More recently, the ups.
I read something where you had a good career going. I looked at some of your stats, and you're a linebacker.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I would say average. Average at best.
You had some good tackles going there, and but you had an injury, right?
I did. Yeah, my senior year, the final scrimmage, inter squad scrimmage before the season started, I was engaged in a block, and a linebacker dove to tackle the ball carrier, missed, and defensive tackle was running behind him, tripped over that linebacker, went right into my knee. This dude was about 6'5", 400 pounds, and heard it pop. I mean, just went into shock after that, and turned out I tore my ACL, MCL, and PCL.
Oh my God!
And the doctor had said that it was more like a motorcycle accident than a football injury.
Really?
And so they couldn't even operate right away. I had to rehab for a month with no ligaments in my knee, just to wait for the swelling to go down so they could operate. So I had a big surgery, an 8-hour surgery in August of 13. And then the next probably 10 months had another 3 on my knee.
Oh my God.
So it was quite the recovery, quite the test of will, I think. Until then I'd been so identified with playing sports, and I never really thought about my career afterwards,
Yeah.
So it was a turning point in my life for sure.
So that was your identity at that point. I had when I was in high school, I ran cross country and track, and I had an injury, and it was just something inside my knees, and it got to the point where it was so painful I couldn't run, but but I had difficulty walking without a lot of pain. But this is in the late 70s, and they couldn't look inside your knee. They could do an X-ray and see if it was broken, and it wasn't. But that was kind of it.
Yeah.
But that's why, in my mind, that's why I went to Catholic High to run for Coach Pete Boudreaux. And man, you talk about throw me for a loop when I couldn't run. So when I read about your injury, I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about what can happen there. When you're kind of all invested, that's who you are, and boom, it stops. So for me, it was a struggle.
Yeah, definitely. And, my entire, the 5 years prior, every summer, every break was all about football.
Yeah.
I never had the opportunity to travel for internships or even, go after one with a larger company because it just wouldn't work with my schedule.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of student athletes these days fall into that.
Right.
And thank God I had a good GPA,
Yeah.
and, I didn't have just a general degree.
Right.
A lot of folks just major in general studies.
Right.
And then they get out and it's like, man, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So
you were on the accounting track back then?
Yeah, I started in political science, actually. I
Really?
had dreams of being an attorney. And one summer I worked an internship at the Office of University Advancement, donor relations. And the next door office was the president's office, Dr. Crane. And he was he came up in the accounting department. He was the dean of accounting, and then made president of the university. So he and I became good friends. And he convinced me to switch to accounting just in case law school didn't work out. That was some of the best advice that I ever got because, I actually had the LSAT scheduled like the week following my injury.
Oh, wow.
And needless to say, I never took it. I paid for it and everything. And but I had always been infatuated with business, the language of business. And I knew I wanted to do a business degree, and, everyone told me, like, look, accountants can do anything, but not everyone can do accounting. And, finance wasn't as big back then as it is now.
Yeah.
But even still, I had a lot of finance classes, and I performed well in them. But I always felt like I could be a good interpreter of, business language and, debits and credits and, give it to a business owner and say, this is what you need to do as a result of these, this data.
I heard a conversation in which you said to help you get through that time post-injury, like trying to redefine who am I now if I'm not, going to be this athlete moving forward or, at least playing collegiate ball. that you relied on some books. Eckhart Tolle was.
Oh, definitely.
I was like, okay, this guy's got it going on, man. So that's some good stuff. So tell us, did I read that right?
Yeah, definitely. So I was gifted A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose when I was in high school. Never really took it serious. And then after my injury, of course, I had a lot of time to read. I mean, I couldn't work out. And so I revisited that, and I started reading more about athletes and excellent coaches like Phil Jackson. The book that he says changed his life is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So for the next, probably even to this day, I'm real big on mindfulness and spirituality and being in the present. And I think that's helped me kind of grow as both a person, father, but especially a business owner, because I don't really let a lot of stuff get under my skin. And as a result, I'm able to keep from having those outbursts that so many CEOs and CFOs are known for, and that really give them a bad rep.
Yeah.
So those books were real important for me, and I still always recommend them, to anybody who asks. You just have to be really open-minded, really empathetic to be able to even relate to books like that.
Yeah, well, that's a very mature response to a tough situation. So you were able to finish your degree, and then you got your CPA?
That's right, yeah, and I almost dropped out of school. I mean, kudos to the guys at Southeastern, the professors there, because I told them, I was in therapy for 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'd go to Peak Performance out in Denham, and I asked them, hey, let me just take a semester off. I'll come back stronger. I said, no, you're not quitting. I don't care if you have to wait until after the finals are done for you to turn in these assignments. I'll make it happen for you. And so luckily, a lot of times I took tests after hours, in their office, and came through. I mean, it wasn't easy. I mean, talk about not only the physical strain, but I mean, I was on crutches for 10 months, and I couldn't really drive. And so the mental toll, I mean, it was no joke, but it really set me up for what you just said, passing my CPA exam. Because when it came time to go to postal weight, they said, look, we expect you to pass the exam. And I said, okay, sure. I knew that I could pass it because I came back from that injury. And, it's just one of those things I tell my team all the time, you make a promise to yourself, you fulfill that promise, and all of a sudden your self-confidence grows. And then you make another promise, and then you achieve it, and then you make another, and then another. And then before you know it, you're to a point where you really feel like you can do anything you put your mind to. And so passed the CPA exam in 2015. I was in audit, and I had some excellent clients. I mean, blue chip clients, Raising Cane's, Turner, Excel, you name it. And so I was able to really learn the best and the worst of these accounting departments. And I was always more inquisitive to speak to more folks than just the accountants. I wanted to talk to the ops guys, to the marketing guys, to the IT guys, because I always knew that, I didn't feel like that public accounting life was for me. Just work-life balance was a struggle for a lot of those partners. And I always felt that if I wanted to work more on a contract basis, I could do it, for myself, where I have more control. I can control recruiting, who I work with. I can control my clients. A lot of times the clients are the ones that run off some of those, aspiring staff and seniors. And but nonetheless, it was a great experience. I mean, I learned from some of the top accountants, in the state. And
you were there several years.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from that first postgraduate job at Postal Weight?
I would say that doing what you say you're going to do is the most important piece. Communicating well with the client. At the end of the day, there's a ton of accounting firms out there. There's a ton of professional services firms out there. I was really surprised at how apparent it was that even professionals in the company, wouldn't do what they said that they would do. And so, just learning that, showing up is key, being consistent is key, but then also, performing on your obligations is key.
Yeah.
A lot of people take that for granted, but, it doesn't happen as often as you would think.
Yeah. Well, it's when you're selling your business, a lot of people will oversell. Just entrepreneurs in general. I don't mean this to apply to any one company. To get the work, right? To get the job, to get your foot in the door, but then you got to deliver, right?
Definitely.
So you moved next into the corporate world, right?
Yeah, I did. And I had been recruited. Headhunters love those seniors in public accounting, right? And I was just about to make manager. And Postlethwaite, they had me on the partner track, and they told me that. And it was just something that, I felt, again, that I probably need a little bit more of a well-rounded experience, right? So I had interviewed for a job at SetPoint at the time, and I was really interested in like financial analysis, and getting out of kind of the debits and credits. And they took me to lunch, and they asked me what I was interested in, and I started telling them, financial analysis. I want to learn, I call them board decks. But I want to learn the presentations that the finance guy gives to the ops guy and stuff like that. Well, they didn't really have a need or a want for that. So I didn't get the job. And I asked the CFO at the time, he was, early 30s. And I said, what advice do you have for me, now that you know my resume and where I'm going to go? And I've asked that question before, mostly on deaf ears. Yeah. But he responded and he said, John, you need to worry less about the position on the team and just get on the right team. And so, I took that with me to Epic. What's interesting, when I worked at Epic Piping, I got a job that I didn't even apply for. And this is a kind of a funny story. So a former coworker from Postlethwaite was the assistant controller at Epic. And there was a job opening for a financial planning and analysis manager that I was grossly underqualified for, but I applied anyway. And so it came down to me and a lady who crushed me on experience, resume, all that. She had 20 years of experience at Community Coffee. So long story short, the CFO brings me in, says, "Hey, John, the lady who recruited you here, the assistant controller, she's not with us anymore. So how would you like to be the assistant controller?" And so just like any entrepreneur, I just said, sure. Yeah. It's like I heard you on another podcast say, when a client asks if you could do something, you just say yes, and then you figure out how to do it.
Right. That's a Richard Branson.
Yeah. So that was it. So I said yes, and I met some excellent people there and learned from the best. All of those guys at Epic Piping, they all cut their teeth in the Shaw Group, and we just had it was an awesome time for me because I think they started in 2016 or 2015, and I joined up in 2018. So I was at the very beginning of the exponential growth that they would have. Right, they've since bought more fabrication shops. Their international production is doing great, and they're really cementing themselves as a world-renowned leader in pipe fabrication.
So it's a Bernhard company.
Yes.
Jim Bernhard being one of the greatest entrepreneurs that ever came out of the state. And I was thinking, being in that environment, this highly entrepreneurial, high growth environment, what was your takeaway from that experience there? What did you extract from that?
Yeah, the main thing was you bring in people, exceptional people, you pay them exceptionally well, and you expect exceptional results. And, from that enterprise is also how I learned, to leverage, to use debt to, fund your business growth. And, that served its purpose well on my real estate investing side. But everyone there at Epic was at the top of their game, always on point. Pro, they look the part, they speak well, they're always prepared. And I'm just really blessed to have learned from those guys. They included me in a lot of important meetings, and I just added value because I took notes. I just sat in the corner and I took notes. And every time they need something, I had it all on file. And that's what I try to tell guys on my team. You've got to add value any way you can.
Right.
Nobody wanted to hear from a 26-year-old public accounting guy. But it was just a great experience.
So you were there a number of years, and at some point it's time for you to fly, right, and set the sails for your own. How did you know that you were ready, and what did that look like?
Sure, yeah. So I would say in the summer of 2021, and even leading up to that, COVID was big for me. COVID, we're stuck at home. I had basically a 1-year-old. My wife was still working at the time. But I just had the opportunity to really set back and assess my life and where I was going. And I knew that, in corporate America, I could have a nice salary, probably limited stress. But I felt that if I wanted to achieve my goals, that I had to make a move. And my good friend Sterling Chapman, he really taught me the importance of visualizing. And so I have a vision board at my house. It's probably, 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall. And I've just got a ton of different pictures and vehicles and watches and family pictures. And, I know what my pool is going to look like. I know what my backyard will look like. I know what the front of my house will look like. I know what cars my wife and I will drive. I know what sports I want my daughters to be in. And all that said, it really set the stage for me to address every decision that I made in my life. And the question was, will this decision, if I say yes, will it get me closer to that vision, or will it get me further from it? And from that point on, every decision became easy. And so, in COVID, I really reassessed everything. And, honestly, interest rates were low, right? Everybody knows that. I was on like a 15-year mortgage on my house before that. So I told my wife, she had been wanting to stay home. We had just had our second child in 2021. And it was real rough for her going back. And so I said, look, let's refinance the house at a real low rate. I was on a 15, now I'm on a 30. Our note's real low. Let's see if I can make something happen. And I always felt like I could go back, I could always fall back into corporate America. But what really did it for me, I almost got the CFO job at Celtic. It was down to me and one other guy. And again, I had no business being there. But, I'm in there meeting with, the CFO who was retiring and the CEO. And they're asking me all these questions, and I feel like I'm doing really well. And I ended up not getting the job. The recruiter told me it was because the other candidate had experience with a software conversion that they were moving towards. And so I said, that's fine, no problem. But then I stepped back and said, look, I'm, a 20-something-year-old guy going against, folks who have been doing this for longer than I've been alive. And that, they see something in me. So now it's time that I see in myself what they see in me.
This podcast is sponsored by NAI Ladder & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Ladder & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. Turnkey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/ NXT?
So in October of 2021, I was approached by a friend of mine, Ricky Ferreira, whose son Doug I grew up with. And Ricky was good friends with this guy named David Dean. And David was a sole proprietor CPA, one bookkeeper, been with him for 30 years. And he was looking for someone to essentially buy his firm. And it was a legacy or traditional CPA firm, right? A lot of tax, some bookkeeping. And I didn't know anything about tax. Right. But I knew that it would be my avenue to essentially grow what was to become Attracct. And I knew that in order to service my clients better, I needed to learn a little bit of tax. And so he and I worked out a deal, which was essentially an owner financing deal over 3 years, but I paid him back in one. And we've since kind of grown, his side of the business. We've increased tax billings. But what I loved about it was everything was set up for me. Nice office on South Fork, copier, coffee, appliances, kitchen, nice conference room, all that. And so I basically walked into it, it was plug and play. So, around that time, I had also been approached by a bunch of clients or future clients who, needed help with their books. Yeah. And that's when I started Attracct.
So everything, you refied your house, your wife is able to stay home with the kids, and you start this business, you walk into it, and now you're ready to rebrand, right?
That's right.
And get going. So you went from the corporate world to straight into business, but you went in there and the treadmill's moving a little bit. You got something going, that's a nice way to start it.
Definitely. And it was calculated. I mean, I always say I had a soft landing.
Yeah. It sounds like it. So tell us the meaning behind Attracct, the name.
So along the lines of, Eckhart Tolle and these, mindfulness-based books, I was reading this book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne.
Yeah, great book.
And, it's so cliche, but the crux of it is that, the secret in life is the law of attraction.
Right.
And that is, what you put out into the world, you will get back. And I'd actually called the firm first Impact Accounting Solutions, which, is now Attracct Accounting Advisors. But I didn't do a great job on the Google search, and there was a company in Colorado by that same name. Yeah. I just felt like Attracct was a little bit more of a difficult word to spell because I spelled it with 2 C's.
At the end.
That's right.
Like it looks like accounting, right?
Yeah. ACCT is the last 4 letters, which is the abbreviation for accounting.
Yeah.
And so, but I knew that I wanted something that was punny, right? That, folks would appreciate. And so I went with Attracct. And anytime I tell folks what my email address is, I always say, Attracct with 2 C's. And it kind of throws them for a loop. But I'm hopeful that it can, kind of be just a one-word brand going forward.
Yeah, so I'm a branding-minded guy, and I love that part of business very much. I mean, and I think you hit it. I think that has a lot of potential because because it's just off of the actual spelling. You can play on that and draw that in. So,
but yeah, and I've got a great design guy. I mean, Drew McCardle is with Outpost, and he really took the ball and ran with it. I always felt like I wanted to differentiate myself from a traditional CPA firm. And, the branding is really big.
Yeah. But you started with a partner, right?
Yeah, and still to this day. So I started Attracct in late 2021. By April of 2022, my former boss, now partner, Armin Michaud, came over. And Armin had cut his teeth in the Shaw Group for 15 years. He worked his way up on the fabrication side. He was the controller at Sunland, their biggest fab shop at like 26. Right. He stayed on through the CB&I acquisition, and then 2 years to the day, when the band left CB&I and got back together to form Epic, he was like the 9th employee. And so this guy is someone who is a great friend, mentor. We always laugh. We've worked together for 5 years and never once got into an argument. And, he is very technical, very well experienced. He learned from some awesome CFOs and even CEOs. He also had a stint in project management. So the goal was always, or eventually, for me to kind of be, the sales guy, and he kind of be the technician.
Yeah.
So through his resume and through his contacts, we've been able to land some really big contracts working with some other Bernhard portfolio companies, Bernhard Capital Partner portfolio companies, and then also Bernhard LLC, who recently sold to DIP, which is a Swedish private equity firm. So he's been really phenomenal in our growth, and it's one of those things. If you want to go far, if you want to go if you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. That's cool. So you guys have some things that you focus on. There's some big names you drop in there. But for some of the smaller companies, you're offering that fractional CFO service.
Definitely.
So those are companies that are not big enough maybe to have in-house accounting staff, but you guys come in and give them that guidance.
Yeah, exactly. We brand ourselves as an accounting consulting firm.
Yeah.
We help our clients know their numbers, know their worth, and know their future. And our niche is growth-minded, construction or field service-based small businesses. And so many companies out there need more than just a bookkeeper. Their bookkeeper will give them a P&L and a balance sheet, rarely a cash flow statement, rarely. But there's no advisory services going on there. It's just, here's your actuals. I hope you can read it, and I hope you can make a decision off of it. So what we do is we go in there. We not only keep sound books, but we implement key performance indicators. For a lot of construction-based companies, or take a roofing company for instance. We'll break down labor revenue per square, material revenue per square, and the same on the cost side.
Oh, that's very cool.
And we also build out dashboards, to where a business owner doesn't need to look at his financials anymore. We take the quantitative data from the financial statements, we combine them with qualitative data, whether it's utilization, man hours, those type of things, and basically have them on a platter for these guys or ladies to make business decisions. So we've been able to scale quickly with that. It's very niche based.
Yeah.
But it's largely, like you said, fractional.
I really like that. I tell my financial people when they're presenting financial statements, what is the story? Okay, so it's one thing to do the financial statements and put it in front of you, income and balance sheet, but what is the story? And so that story may be, hey, we need to get our insurance costs under control, or we need to ramp up this division, or increase revenues here, decrease expenses, and by having that story told, then I know that the understanding is clear to all those involved in the prep. I think that's very important, but I love that dashboard idea.
Yeah, and one thing about our firm is it's that we've done it, right? So many public accounting firms, have great consulting departments, but very rarely are the people giving you advice. Very rarely do they have experience in corporate America. I can't with the right state of mind tell you what to do and ignore the fact that you're going to face some backlash from ops, right? If I tell a accounting department or a finance department that you need to be doing this, this, and this, well, I know how the operations folks are going to react to that. And it's not as simple for me to say, well, you just need to sell more work. Well, it's not that easy, right. And so what we also do is we break down revenue streams, and so many folks are worried about the top line. It's not about the top line. It's about the gross profit line, and we're able to hone in on the higher margin activity and relay to our clients that, look, your P&L is great. Your net income is great, but you can't spend your net income. You spend your cash. And so many folks, make a ton of money every year, and they're like, man, where did my cash go? Well, all you need to do is review a statement of cash flows. But in order to do that, you've got to have a sound balance sheet, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
So, we just work with clients and also on the cash forecasting side. I mean, especially in construction, you might have a payer who will pay you, 30, 60-day terms, and your laborers want to get paid this week.
Right. And
so we work with our clients too on debt structuring, lines of credit. A lot of times we'll handle the monthly reporting requirements for that. And we're basically just an advisor to the business owner. Yeah. We bridge the gap between the bankers, the insurance companies, and are able to really add value.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so give me the timing on when the real estate deal started in relation to Attracct.
Sure, yeah. So when I was at Postlethwaite, one of my niches was banks and credit unions. And the biggest part when you audit those entities is reviewing their loans receivable. So it would always be kept for like a more senior staff person, right? So I always did the loan reviews. And we would go in and get, say, the 10 largest loans. And so pick any credit union in town, right? We probably did them. So I'd get handed over, some loan files and start going through. And the first one I'd look at is a $5 million line of credit. The second one I look at was a $3.5 million line of credit. And I started looking at their files and figuring out that these were all real estate investors. And these loans were secured by 30, 40, 50 houses in parts of North Baton Rouge that I'd never heard of. And I looked at their tax returns and saw what they were bringing in, and then I saw that they were paying no taxes at the bottom line. But yet I saw the P&Ls, I saw the cash flow, and I thought, man, there's got to be something to this. So around that time, I started getting involved getting interested in real estate investing. And so I read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Gary Keller's The Millionaire Real Estate Investor book. I've read a ton of Bigger Pockets books. And I started to surround myself with people who, were real estate investors. And nobody in my family had ever done anything, that way, at least on purpose. It was an experience that obviously takes some debt, right? It takes some, some guts to go out there and learn something new. And so that's one of the reasons also why I left public accounting, because I knew that I needed more time to devote to, real estate investing. So I started at Epic in 2018. By 2020, I was finally ready to pull the trigger on buying, our first rental property.
So whenever an entrepreneur wants to start something, they run their idea by friends and family, and invariably there's a lot of naysaying, right? I mean, like, watch out for this, but you got to think about this. So what was your experience with that?
Well, my dad, I know he's going to listen to this, but, he's always been my go-to. I bounce everything off of him, everything. And, he was there for me when I wanted to quit football and all throughout my injury and everything like that. And so I told him, look, I want to get involved in owning rental property. And he said, John, what are you going to do when it's, Christmas Eve, your tenant's 2 months behind, she's got a sick kid and two others, do you have the heart to put her out, on Christmas Eve if she doesn't pay the rent? And my response was, Dad, you can't always jump to the worst case scenario on, when something like that happens. I said, and I thought about it, I said, here's what I'd do. I wouldn't put him out on Christmas Eve. I would contact the local governing authority, housing authority or what have you, and say, look, these folks need help. They're staying in my place. I'm not going to put them out, but we need a plan to transition them out of here, because at the end of the day, I'm losing. And I thought that was a sound response. And
Sure.
eventually he said, okay, I brought my younger brother in to as my partner, and he was an RN. He's now in nurse anesthetist school, CRNA.
Oh wow!
And I brought him in because I always felt like I wanted to do this for the family, and also I knew that my dad wouldn't back us if I didn't bring him in. So I brought him to a few real estate meetups, and he was in. And he's so handy and, well organized, and he and I make a great team.
So you do more the business side, and he's more the field side?
Definitely, yeah. Now I manage rehabs up here in Baton Rouge. Right now we're up to 15 properties, a lot in Tangipahoa Parish, and we've got some up here in Baton Rouge and Baker as well.
Now, when you say 15 properties, are those total properties that you've done or properties that you're holding?
Ones that I'm holding. Yeah, we've only sold one or two.
Okay. So the whole business plan is buy to lease.
That's right. Yeah, and we implement what's called the BRRR Method. So it's the letter B with 4 R's: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And so it's essentially a value play ad. It's a little complicated, but the rub here is you want to be into a property, meaning your acquisition cost plus your rehab. You want to be all in at 70% of the after repair value, or what it will appraise for. Because what you're into it for is typically cash. It might be your cash or private investor cash. And then you're able to have a sound investment to go to a bank and say, look, I've got this asset. There's not a mortgage on it. Will you give me a mortgage on it? And they'll say, sure, we'll give you 80% loan to value. So the idea is when they give you a mortgage back, you pay off yourself, you pay off your investors. Now you've got no money stuck in that deal. You've got a note, but the note will continue to get paid down by your tenants.
Okay. So when you see so many commercials on whatever it is, social media, whatever, and it's all these real estate guys teaching the program. I bought real estate with no cash. What you just explained seems a little more practical and a little more reasonable. Or when they're saying that stuff on social media, they just gloss it over that?
Oh yeah. I mean, what I just explained is not really easy for a lot of people to understand. And so they'll basically say, I got this house with $0 of my own money. Well, it's other people's money. And the way that they were able to get that OPM or other people's money is, they essentially get a loan. They work out some type of terms. They might pay them 10, 12, 15% APY. And essentially they're able to add value to this asset such that, again, on the refi, those original lenders get paid off.
Right.
It doesn't always happen, though.
Yeah.
I know of a lot of folks who have kind of gotten burned, especially as the market turned in the last year or so with these interest rates.
Okay, so let's talk about the first project.
Yeah.
You decide you're going to do it. You've got all the naysayers pacified, and you're ready to go in and do your first deal. What'd that first deal look like?
Yeah, so my first deal was a turnkey deal, so I won't really go into that. All that means is basically I bought a house on market, bought it for $135,000, 3% interest. So my note was, I don't know, in the 8s or so, 800s. I rented it out the first day for $1,300 a month.
So turnkey meaning you just didn't have to do any work.
Exactly.
There was so you're not really flipping.
So
right?
Yeah, so the second one though was a big rehab. We have since flipped one property. We've got another one going on in Hammond now, but this second one was a big one. So we bought this house $99,000 for it was a foreclosure on market, and it was in rough shape. I mean, and not even that apparent, to me at the time.
Right.
But my dad has a staunch background in carpentry. My grandfather was a carpenter.
Right. So
my dad grew up, framing houses, working on roofs, etc. So when he saw it, he kind of like chastised us for not seeing, some things that we should have seen, right? Rot, some siding was buckling, etc. Come to find out, in this particular house, the entire front, elevation almost needed to be reframed.
Wow.
And so long story short, we did that ourselves. We, meaning myself, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And we were out there every weekend for like 6 months. And I swore that I would never swing a hammer again after that. And so, but it became an awesome deal because, you know, we bought it for $100. We ended up putting about $30,000 into it. Now, it would have been $50 or $60 if we'd had to outsource the labor. But I mean, we were scraping ceilings and framing walls, and my brother laid all the floors. My mom did the backsplash. You know, we're moving in vanities and you know, getting them set for a plumber to come behind us and hook them up. We basically did everything that didn't require an HVAC guy or a plumber or an electrician.
Right.
And so that house appraised at like 170, I think, when all was said and done. So on the refi, I want to say we got maybe $136K in loan proceeds. And so, you know, we were able to pay back our private investors and actually got more in loan proceeds than we had stuck in the deal, right? We had 130 stuck in the deal. And then that property now rents for, you know, $1,800 a month. And my note on it's like $800.
Yeah.
You know, so that kind of was the proof of concept for us to say, look, we know now what to expect. And there was just a lot of hiccups along the way that we, you know, learned from and got through, but it was worth it.
So it's really interesting to watch how you have done your post on that side of your business, right? I mean, you're very transparent about the deals, just like you are here, the terms of the deal, and before pictures is like, here we go again, right? And it's really interesting because, you know, you're putting it all out there, and I'm just wondering if there's a part of that is like that brings on more responsibility. And what's your theory on that?
Yeah, 100%. So I had some awesome advice from one of my mentors and good friend of mine. His name's Assis Asharia. He actually was instrumental in me starting this firm, you know, along with guys like Aldo Russo and Sterling, like I mentioned before. But he told me that, John, you have to use social media to your advantage. He said, you can't be worried about the folks who you're going to repel away from you, you know, for you being arrogant or for you, you know, coming off as, hey, look at me, look how successful I'm being. Instead, worry about the folks that you're going to attract into your life.
Yeah.
And that has been so important in my growth, because I'm out there. There's a lot of accountability to that too.
Yeah.
Because if I make a post and, you know, I say my plans for a deal, now I've got, you know, however many folks following me are going to ask me about it in the future. And I need to make sure that I get it done and that I do it right. And so those posts are very intentional.
There's something about it that definitely, if you're business minded, if you like real estate, and it's exciting. Like, I mean, I you know, I'm generally excited for you, you know, when you're putting those details out there. So I'm glad that you're experienced with that. Where I was really initially, what I was thinking about that is, isn't that so different from, you know, when I started business? Like,
Definitely.
I mean, kind of keeping everything close to your vest, not letting the details out there, you know. And here, it's just a new model, and it's just different. And I think in a more positive way, you know?
Yeah. You know, through my readings with, you know, Eckhart Tolle and the ego and stuff like that, my ego will not be hurt if I mess up. You know what I mean? If I fail, because I have had failures, you know, and, but at the end of the day, if I could be a motivator or, you know, someone that me maybe 3 years ago could look at and see, oh, that's just a kid from Shenandoah. Like, I know that guy. Yeah. You know, if he can do it, what can I do? And I've had a lot of folks reach out to me, you know, from, man, my entire life, really, just recently, you know, hey, John, I want to learn more about this or that. And I'm happy to do that, because at the end of the day, you know, I'm happy to serve as someone that they could learn vicariously through, because a lot of folks did that for me, a lot of them.
Pivotal is pleased to sponsor the Next Entrepreneur podcast. Pivotal is a commercial building contractor that performs new building construction, building maintenance, tenant improvements, renovations, and additions. Pivotal has been in business for over 25 years. The Pivotal team is simply the best. They have an impeccable safety record and they crush schedules. A focus on quality and professional communication is at the root of their success. Pivotal also performs programs for clients who build in multiple markets with current projects in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. If you are looking for the perfect addition to your project team, a contractor who can deliver the results you need to succeed, Pivotal is the one. When it's critical, call Pivotal. They can be found online at pivotalperforms.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm, offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. So, John, the age-old saying about real estate, it's all about location, location, location. So I was just kind of curious, just thinking about doing the research on you and how things are different from how you do your business through social media and how so much has changed in the world. Would you change that saying based on your experience?
I think location is still of the utmost importance, but I don't think it's the only thing. Yep. I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there, for investors to work in, say, maybe a more low-income area where, Section 8 is key. A lot of investors only focus on Section 8, and that might fly in the face of location.
Yeah.
And now at the end of the day, most all of my properties are either in flood zone X or AE with a manageable, flood insurance quote. As of late, the home insurance market is flipped on its head. A lot of companies won't even write anything south of I-10, so I kind of avoid those areas.
Right. Which is, it's just so unfortunate for those areas because it's really, really going to have a huge impact. Because it's not only would people avoid going to do business there, as you just maybe suggested, but for the businesses that operate there, they're getting hammered. These insurance costs are not modest increases. They are many multiples of previous year's expenses. So it's really going to be tough for those areas.
I think that as my friend Sterling would say, you can make money in any market, in any investment. For the last 3 months, I've been tracking a trailer park out in Livingston Parish.
Yeah.
I think the deal is going to fall through, unfortunately, but I underwrote that like I would a multifamily. And, you're doing present value calculations and, IRR returns, internal rate of return. And, I'm underwriting it so that I could go to a bank. This was actually going to be an owner finance deal, but that's so I could go to a bank and say, here's my underwriting. I'm going to try to make it easy on you. So all that said, there's just a lot of opportunity out there that, you're not going to find a nice rental in Shenandoah, where you can cash flow.
Right.
Or you might be able to find one in Broadmoor, maybe Sherwood Forest. But all that said, those areas where folks used to say, I'll never invest there, well, now they're investing there.
Yeah.
And, there's just so much to it in real estate. I mean, you've got the cash flow, you've got the debt pay down, you've got the tax savings, and then you've got the potential for appreciation.
So you're just a couple of years in on the real estate gig, is that right?
That's right.
So when you look in that short period of time, you've got 15 properties that you've done. When you look at how you attack a project today versus when you started, how much growth and improvement has you and your team had in that short period of time?
Yeah, well, you said it. I mean, I now hire a project manager, and I manage them. I guide them through the whole ropes. I mean, there's a lot of dependencies involved, and you don't want to do the sheetrock before you do the plumbing. I've made that mistake. You don't want to do the flooring before you do the paint. I've made that mistake. Now I get all my properties inspected on the front end. Luckily, one of my properties had a real bad drain line issue. And luckily it wasn't on my property, but I'd never got that line snaked before. Yeah. So now I do that. I'm willing to pay the $700-800 on the front end for an inspection. I'm still going to do the deal. I just need to know everything that's going to be wrong with it. Right. And, at first I was just flying by the seat of my pants.
So there are so many things that can go wrong in that business as well as so many other businesses. So from buying a property with bad bones to, finding what's the right mix of how much you put into a property, like overspending on your improvements. You may get excited and say, wouldn't it be great if we did this and this, but the market might not support that. Right?
Yeah, we made that mistake. I call it a mistake on our first one. We put crown molding in this rental and it looked really nice, nice backsplash. We didn't probably get the increase in appraised value that we expected. And that's the number one thing that a lot of new investors mess up is they over improve. So just learning the market, and utilizing my network of, appraisers and figuring out, what does that neighborhood call for?
Yeah, very good. Okay, I want to talk about, you're involved in this group. It's the Red Stick RIA meetup. Right?
That's right.
So tell me how that started, what it is, how it works.
Sure. So I had started attending real estate meetups in 2018, maybe 2019, and I didn't even really know that they existed. But my buddy Aldo Russo, he's with HDMK Home Inspection. He has his finger on the pulse there for what's going on in the local real estate market, and said, John, you ought to go. So I went, and I met some awesome people. Basically it's a monthly gathering, meetup, what have you, and they'll bring in different speakers each month. And, it's also a way for the folks who are big players in the game to, bounce ideas off of each other, share contacts, stuff like that. It's very much a abundance mindset of, investors themselves. And I've really tried to apply that to really my whole life. Right. So when COVID hit, and everything shut down in 2020, I had actually reached out to the guy who ran that other group. It was called the Ring, the Real Estate Networking Group. And they would meet monthly. They would meet at the Hyatt on Bluebonnet, and then they moved it to the Hampton Inn on Riger Road. And I reached out to him, and I said, hey, Richard, I really love the group. I'm sorry that we haven't done anything in the last couple months. Are you thinking about starting it back up? Because if not, I'd like to kind of take the reins. And he said, well, let me think about it. And, my friend Sterling, who already had the podcast and
the Rent Roll.
Yeah, Rent Roll radio show. Yeah. He already had the podcast. And I mean, he wrote the book for how I do my social media posts.
Really?
Yeah. And so I said, Sterling, I'm just a nobody. I think I had one property at the time. I said, me and you get together, I'll run it. Let's put your name on it. Let's go in, me and you, and let's just start our own. And so I talked with the Crown Plaza. We meet the first Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m., pretty much without fail, 6:30 to 8. And, Sterling would put it on his social media, as would I. And we felt like it was a nice mix of, someone like Sterling, who now has, I don't know, close to 80 doors.
Wow.
In addition to, syndicating big apartment deals that I also invested in passively. Versus me, who just had a few properties under their belt and was still trying to figure things out. So he's a great communicator. And we were able to, kind of bring in some folks from our network to come in and speak. And before we knew it, our first meetup had maybe 20 people. And then the second one maybe had 35. And then now we're averaging close to 70.
Wow.
And it's free. And it's just a great way to get folks out there. It's on a Wednesday evening, and a lot of folks, folks you see day to day are not going to sacrifice their Wednesday evenings to come out to something like this. So that everybody in there is, they're there for a reason.
Right.
And that has been really one of the main reasons why I've been able to scale so quickly, because now the deals come to me.
So that's really interesting, because it's this abundance mindset that you talk about, right? So y'all are gathering, you're talking, you're sharing, but the 70 people that are showing up, I don't know, maybe half of them or whatever, want to do what you're doing, or maybe all of them do. And so you would think that, well, am I sabotaging my market here? But with the abundance mindset, it actually comes back the complete opposite, and that's fascinating.
Yeah, Sterling says it all the time that, he feels like he's training his competition.
Yeah.
And that's what he did with me.
Yeah.
But I think back, and I used to have the same thought with college football, okay, coaches especially. They'd put on these camps, these clinics, and they'd show everyone else their scheme. And I thought, man, why would you tell everyone else your scheme? Well, if Saban's putting on a clinic, he's going to teach you everything that you know, but he's not going to teach you everything he knows, for one. And for two, you still have to execute. You still have to put the work in.
Right.
And Sterling and I both know that there's very few people out there who can outwork either of us.
Yeah, good point. You could give someone a recipe, but they still have to execute.
Definitely.
And you're, you would be safe. But it's a fascinating concept. But you say it's free, but there's some expenses with that. And how does that work?
Yeah, we just eat it. The room rental's a couple $100 a month. We don't pay our speakers. Some people do. Yeah. We don't take anything at the door from the attendees. Some people do. We've been approached by, title companies and realtors and lenders who want to sponsor the group, but we never want it to feel like it's a pitch fest or a sales, tactic. We just want to talk about what's going on in our investment lives. And, it's very much so a mastermind in the sense that you're surrounded by people who are doing things, they're making mistakes, but you're not getting beat down for it.
Yeah.
You're getting supported. You're saying that people are saying to you, man, I made that same mistake. Don't sweat it. In real estate investing, it's not a matter of if you make your money back, but when, stay the course. And I've made some of the best friends, just from having that group. Again, I'm at the front of the room, so I have instant credibility, even though I don't feel like I deserve it,
John, it's interesting. Throughout the podcast, as you shared your stories, I've picked up on this level of maturity as a young man, which I think is exceptional. And my thoughts have been going like, he must have some amazing parents, because you're saying things that come from like someone who has a really strong foundation. And so how close am I on that?
Oh, you're spot on. My parents, here's the thing, very much salt of the earth. My parents, neither of them went to college. My dad moved out of his house at 16. I think my mom moved out from her house soon after. And it was always a childhood of work, but also focus and just strong values. My dad always used to tell me, don't put yourself in a bad situation, and right from wrong. It was never a helicopter-ish experience, right? And I made mistakes in, growing up, and my parents were always there to support me. And I saw how hard they worked. My dad coached me when I was in middle school, and he was the head coach of the football team, and he worked in Metairie, lived in Baton Rouge. So we'd practice at like 4 p.m. So he'd leave Baton Rouge, go to Metairie, work until like 3, come back for 4, practice till 5:30. Then he'd go back to Metairie that night, pull an all-nighter, maybe sleep a couple hours on his office couch, and then we'd see him the next day at practice. And my mom was the same way. I mean, I gave her a hard time because I was always the last kid picked up from after-school care, always. They paid so many late fee fines. But at the end of the day, I saw the amount of work and how much they cared about what they did. And I always felt like they set the tone for where Roberts Brothers Investments is going. My parents basically changed the trajectory of our family from just a financial wealth perspective. And it's only through hard work. And, they were always there for me. And so I felt that I owed it to them, and I owed it to the people around me and anyone who ever believed in me to do my very best. And that's really what keeps me going.
Man, I want to stand up and start cheering. That's a great story. And I just love that. I love, the impact that parents can have on their children, in a positive way. And when you see someone like yourself that has taken that and then they're ready to do what you just said, it's extraordinary. Okay, so let's talk about the future of your businesses, and tell us where you think, when you look 5-10 years out for Attracct Accounting Advisors, what's your vision there? Yeah,
so we actually implement traction at our firm. It's self-implemented. And what
does that mean?
Yeah, so Traction is this book by Gino Wickman. And it is an entire system. It's called the EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it combines methods of the E-Myth and Good to Great and all of these other business books. And you basically start with a 10-year vision and then work down to a 5-year plan, then 3-year, then 1 year, then quarterly rocks, right? So everything that we do with the firm is very much based on that 10-year plan. In a perfect world, I'd like to be north of $8 million in revenue, have a staff of 10 to 12, and very much be built to sell, honestly.
Yep.
I mean, whether we sell or not is one thing or another, but I mean, I would love for Postlethwaite, HTB, KPMG, whoever to come buy a plug-and-play client advisory services firm. By that point, I'll be in my early 40s. My daughters will be 12 and 10, and I'll be able to kind of sit back, and I'm actually never sit back, but to kind of step back and say, look, I'm gonna live off of the passive income that I hope to be generating by then, and I can chase them around. I mean, there was this one instance at Epic, and it really changed my life. There was a lady who worked in our department, and her daughter was an excellent soccer player. I mean, setting high school records at 8th grade. And I was in the room with her, and her daughter wanted to go to this national camp in Colorado for Team USA. And she was stressed out because she's like, man, I just don't have the time. I can't get away. And I can't, not to mention how expensive it is. And I thought back, I said, that's me in 10 years. Yeah. What do I need to do to make sure that I'm not in that boat in 10 years? And all that said, it's been, I very much want to build a virtual firm, right? One that I can work on the beach, I could work in the mountains, wherever. I'm training my clients now to accept Zoom meetings, and know that just because I'm out in front of you doesn't mean that I'm not reachable. Yep. And so, we want to become the best at this one thing that we do, and that is client advisory services firm. Yeah.
Okay, and the real estate side of business, where do you see that?
Yeah, so my goal was always 60 properties, because I felt that if each one put off $5,000 a year in cash flow, again, it's a get-rich-slow scheme.
Right.
Okay, $5,000, let's say I have 60. So that's now averaging $300K a year in passive income. Well, my younger brother's my half partner, right? So I felt that if I took 300 divided by 2, I could live off of 150 a year in passive income. And but I reached 25% of that goal. It was a 10-year goal. I reached 25% of it in less than 2 years. And so I realized that I probably was selling myself too short.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be so much so on the door count size, but now I'm starting to look at, apartment syndications and, raising capital and basically going in, as a general partner. I'd be able to make an acquisition fee and have a management fee. And of course, that's a huge windfall when you sell those things. So I feel like that might be what's next for me, is just doing bigger deals.
Yeah, very cool. Okay. For the budding entrepreneur who's listening, what advice would you give them?
I would say surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do. Don't take medical advice from your plumber, right? Seek out what it is that you want in your life and just go after it. Don't ask permission from anybody, okay? Just like I did, with you. I just reached out. The first time, folks might not respond. The second time, they might not respond. The third or fourth time, they're going to know you're serious. Yeah. And you just have to knock on those doors, and they're eventually going to open. And so surrounding yourself, reaching out, and then just getting in the right mindset, right? Very much so, you need to be in an abundance mindset, one where, you have to be able to deal with adversity and know that, life isn't going to be fair at all times. You're going to fail, but you have to be able to, press through it and see things to completion. And so those are the things that I would say to a new entrepreneur. If you have any itch of going out on your own, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because, you say, well, what happens if you jump and you fail? Well, I would challenge you to say, well, what happens if you stay?
Yeah, exactly. John, it is a distinct pleasure to talk to you. You're a fine young man. You're going to be you're going to have a fantastic career and future ahead of you. So I'll continue to watch your progress and continued success in all you do.
Thanks, Andrew. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I really enjoyed this episode, but I enjoy this podcast so much. We've had 100+ guests, and I've gotten so much out of it, from building relationships. I love hearing the stories. I love learning from our guests and things that they do in their business that I then deploy and put into practice in mine, which has helped me a lot. I also love building the relationships with some of our guests, like Rigsby Frederick was on this show, ended up falling in love with a piece of art that he had that I bought, and thinking about the young boys from Hammond who custom make knives, custom ordered a set of beautiful knives from them. So a lot of great value that I get out of this, but I really love John's story, how he reached out to me 18 months ago, and we just kind of started following one another, and then next thing you know, he's done a lot of great things in a short period of time, and he's on the show. Great story, great communicator. I appreciate him coming on. I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.